Hello, everybody. This is Show and Tell, my new live cast on LinkedIn and YouTube, where I invite people in to talk about stuff. I even made some intro music. It's pretty awful, so let's try it. Okay, that's enough of that. With me today, I have Rachel, my good friend who does a lot of interesting things on the internet and off the internet. So Rachel, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, friend. I'm Rachel Cherry. I'm a freelance software engineer. I do a lot of work with higher education institutions and using Gatsby and WordPress. But I'm also an online accessibility specialist. So majority of my work is consulting with organizations and individuals about their accessibility on the web.
So Rachel, do you have something to show us today?
I can show you type ORM documentation that I was looking at if you want. I can show you the WP Campus 2020 schedule if you want. No, I don't necessarily have something super specific to let's see, rack the brain a little bit. But I'm excited to announce the WP Campus 2020 online schedule on Monday, so that'll be fun. I've just been kind of working on getting that ready.
So for the uninitiated, can you explain what WP Campus is?
Yeah, of course. I forgot to mention that in my little bio, but I am the director of WP Campus, which is an organization, community, and events for people that use WordPress in higher ed. So we usually have an online conference every year and an in-person conference. And this year, for I'm sure what is obvious reasons, our in-person was canceled and we are hosting an online version of our conference at the end of July. So we are announcing the program on Monday, which is exciting. We're also announcing that instead of 3 days, it's going to be 2 because life. Mostly we've decided to not do workshops. So instead, we're going to announce an initiative to do ongoing workshops and try to insert that into our community on a bi-monthly basis. So we're going to tone down the amount of content that people have to sit in front of their computer for in one single instance and spread that out over the year. So we're excited to announce that on Monday. We have a pretty good lineup. There's someone that might be on this call that might be presenting at said event. So we're excited to have you come and talk about ethics, and that'll be fun to share. So yeah, this has been a pretty chill week in my world comparatively. I'm kind of ramping down because I'm taking the whole month of July off, and except for the conference, obviously, which will be it's like taking the month off is a little, so I'm going to use that time to work on the conference and then to kind of play around with some technology and learn some new things. So I'm playing around with type ORM right now. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Type ORM?
Type ORM.
Please elaborate.
It's a tool that helps you do object relational mapping inside a JavaScript application.
What? Can you be a little more specific?
Let me see. Type ORM.io. Type ORM is an ORM, object relational mapping, that can run in Node.js, Browser, Cordova, PhoneGap, Ionic, React Native, on and on and on and on and on.
Okay, so why? What are you doing with this? Why do you think this is relevant?
I'm exploring a path where I might build a product that I might use this for. So I'm playing around with this. I'm playing around with a few different setups to see what might be best. And I like that you can use this with TypeScript, which I've been wanting to kind of play around with more. So, but it's we have a live comment.
We do?
I should probably
pay attention. Someone is watching. Like the entity framework.
I don't know what the entity framework is. To the Googles, but it is a framework, so it might be like the entity framework is an open source object relational mapping framework for ADO.NET. It's probably very similar.
That uses the same words. So yes,
Yes.
probably the same.
Yes.
Okay, so I just have to tell you this because it's kind of funny. We've known each other for many years now, and we've had some interesting stuff that we've been working on together. I think the first time you came on my radar was way before WP Campus, and way before we ever talked to each other. I remember I was looking for some sort of really unusual thing to do with something in WordPress. And I was like digging into some crazy forum somewhere like deep in the bowels of the internet to try to figure out, is it possible
I think I know where you're going.
value over here? And then there's this plugin that this Bama designer person, Bam a designer.
Bam a designer.
And I'm like, what is this? And I go in, and this extremely overbuilt plugin. The problem is I don't remember what this was about. I don't remember what the plugin was, what I was doing, anything about it. All I remember is the name Bam a designer, and I thought that was hilarious, especially because now I know it's wrong.
Now you know, yeah, it's wrong.
But also, I remember going into it and thinking, for something so small and trivial, this person spent an enormous amount of time. Oh, I do remember. It had something to do with parsing
I know what you're talking
JSON
about.
to do something, like pull tweets into a database or something like that. Take something from Twitter and make it into a post on some weird thing, and then somehow you had made a plugin that pulled something in a certain way from one place to another. But all I remember was I looked at the code and I'm like, I don't understand this code. This is so complicated. Who wrote this?
I thought you were going to say my CPT Enemies plugin, which has nothing to do with Twitter. So now I don't know what you're talking about. So the very first plugin that I ever wrote was this plugin called CPT Enemies that its whole purpose was to create mapping between custom post types and taxonomies. It basically turned custom post types into a taxonomy. Hi friends, hi Jonathan. Yeah, and it, in hindsight, I haven't looked at that code in a long time. No doubt it was probably overbuilt. But it allowed, like, I had a lot of custom post types that I wanted to create relationships.
So it was overbuilt.
But someone else adopted that plugin for me. I don't run it anymore. But that was my first plugin. That's probably my most popular plugin.
Right. The whole point of my story was just that I remember the first time I came across you, I realized that you're one of those people who dives very deep into things and often tries uncharted paths in doing things. So every time I talk to you, you're always like, oh, I found this new thing. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What is this for? Right? And then you like go on this deep dive and build some extremely convoluted thing that's very fancy and extremely well built. And I'm like, cool. I still don't understand it, but it's very neat that you built it, so I don't have to understand it.
I will say that that almost all of my WordPress plugins that I've built and that are like exist on the repo, because I've built obviously a wide array of plugins and stuff that's not on the repo, but the ones that are on the repo, which I don't really take care of anymore, and that's a whole other story. They all are quite interesting. They all are very specific, and Rock the Slack bot was fun to build. It basically sent Slack notifications for various things that happened in the WordPress admin or whatever WordPress app. And then Show Me the Admin is one of my favorites.
Show me the admin.
Like Show Me the Money. That's even the header art for it. from that movie. But what it does is allow you to like hide the admin bar and then reveal it in various ways. So like I use keyboard shortcuts to reveal the admin bar. Or so like I literally type show me in the admin bar, it will just come down, or hide me and it'll go away. Or you can set it to like click a thing in the corner to show it. And the whole reason I built that was because I was getting super annoyed when I was trying to like design a website that the admin bar was there. Even though, but it's helpful to go back and forth between the dashboard and the front end. So it's like I want it to exist. I just don't want it to be in my way when I don't want it there. So yeah, that plugin solved that problem, and I was like, okay, I'll release it to the world.
Okay, so I want to return to something you were talking about in the very beginning, because you have some experience doing online conferences in the past. So before the world changed, you already had done it. Do you have any insights or tips to people who are now trying to pivot their conferences to online?
I'm sure I could pick my brain on that for a second. You know, I think for a lot of people, a lot of it is more like kind of philosophy and mindset and like user experience, as opposed to like anything else, where a lot of people are trying very hard to either completely replicate an in-person conference online, which is not really possible, and or they are so like example, or they're making decisions about an online events and not really thinking about what it's like compared to an in-person, because they've never managed an online event before, so they don't know what it's really like and what that experience is like. So for an example, like a talk that I presented at, they want the speaker to pre-record the talk, which I'm not a fan of. That's a whole other path. That's a personal preference, really, more than anything. And then during my talk, they want me to do Q&A during the talk. Oh. And I'm like, well, I would never do that at an in-person event. Would you? I mean, like, yes, people can.
Me? I do that all the time. You know that.
Well, that's different. So, like, when you're, that's not bad to say. Like, don't get me wrong. In in-person conferences, you can have people that want to ask questions while you're talking, and that's kind of up to the speaker whether or not they want to engage with that.
I know what you mean.
But like, in a pre-recorded talk, I can't stop my talk and like answer your question. I've given lots of talks where I've opened it up to questions, and that's been actually pretty amazing, because I'll like modify my lecture as I go, in response to the conversation in the room, and that's totally fine. But when you've pre-recorded your talk, you can't do that. The reality is that like people should be listening to your lecture, but instead they're just talking with you and probably asking questions that you'll probably answer in like 5 minutes.
Right.
And so it's kind of like, it's just a different mindset. And so a lot of times when I have been having lots of conversations recently with people, trying to pivot, and that's the kind of stuff that I find more interesting to talk about. Those kinds of the user experience of what it's really like compared to an in-person event. On top of all that, aside from all that, then there's a whole breadth of technology potential problems, like the fact that most platforms that exist right now for online events are not accessible. And when people ask me, well, what platforms are there? I'm like, I don't know of any that exist. Like, it's kind of, unless you build your own. So we build our own, because unfortunately the landscape is not great.
So when you're saying that it's not accessible, can you elaborate on that? Like, what part of the platform, where are the accessibility issues?
So, example, a really popular one is Crowdcast. And as someone who is sighted and can use a mouse, it does have some nice features for online events. But if you are not sighted and can not use a mouse, you can't use it. You can't even get into a stream if you can't use a mouse. You literally can't enter a session if you can't, because you you have to have a mouse to click on the join button.
Right,
It's
so you have
not
to do
keyboard.
the grid thing, and then like move mouse to grid number 2, then A5, then click on this, right?
Yeah, you literally, the button to join the stream is not a button, it's like a span or a div. And so like if you can't use a mouse to click on it, then you can't even get in the room, much less deal with the problems inside the stream. So you know,
that's not even an accessibility issue around getting the content that's being presented. That is an accessibility issue, even taking part.
Yeah, you can't even
It's
join.
like going to a venue where you have to climb a 10-foot wall to get in.
It's equivalent to like having an in-person event inside a building without a ramp, or you know, that you had to be able to go upstairs to get inside, you know, to attend. Right. That's the equivalent.
Jonathan Wold is saying in the comments here, the crowdcast is rough to see. I think I can punch this up so you can see it.
Oh, look at that.
Crowdcast is rough. Not a big fan. Did a series last month and ran into a number of difficulties.
Yeah.
It's, I think, to me, like if we ignore the whole how do you get in part, what I'm seeing a lot of is the things that happen in a live conference when they are attempted to be translated over into online fail for numerous reasons, including technology. And one of the things that is becoming more common at conferences, which is using some form of captioning, seems to entirely fail in an online conference. And I posit as a hypothesis that the reason some conferences want to have pre-recorded talks is so that they can caption them in advance. Because then at least you have a video with captioning that you can turn on, and it can be done properly, as in built in using SRTs and done the right way, right? It's interesting because I'm doing 2 talks next month. I'm doing a talk at an event apart about ethics, and I'm doing a talk at an unnamed to-be-announced conference on that will be announced on Monday, was it? Yeah. About ethics. And an event apart is doing pre-recorded talks with a Q&A session afterwards. And the other unnamed conference is doing a live version of the talk. So it's going to be curious to see just the difference experience. I went to the event apart conference that was this week to see how it works. And it was kind of interesting because they use a third-party platform that had a schedule and then a timer. And then when you click on the schedule item that is coming up next, it would count you down. And then at the time when the time slot started, you would get a play button. And you click the play button. And then when you click the play button, video starts. So that means all the attendees are technically in the same space at the same time, but they're all starting the video at their own time, right? So everyone is kind of staggered time-wise. And then there's an open chat on the side. So you'd often see things like, I would do this thing where I would watch the video and I would pause and rewind and then see something again to like type it in and put it on Twitter. So I'd be 30, 40, 50 seconds behind. Like I'd get farther and farther behind. And then people would mention things that are coming up, but it's out of context for me. So people would be like, oh yeah, that's a great point. And I'm like, which point? And then, later on, all of a sudden this thing pops up and I'm like, obviously this must have been the great point, right? So there was this weird, it was a very strange experience. And then after the talk, they opened a separate channel, which was a Zoom window where you could go and actually have Q&A directly with the speaker, which was neat. But in that experience, I just saw all these very complicated technical challenges that are involved in a live conference. Like, if something goes wrong, or you like lose attention, or you're compelled to go back in time, right? Like rewind, but then you're off time-wise from everyone else. But there's no real way of solving that. The solution would be to force everyone to watch it on the same clock, but that means people might drop in late or they will have trouble connecting. So that doesn't work either. So you have this damned if you do kind of situation where there is no solid solution. So I don't envy people who are trying to make this work, but it's curious to see all these different solutions.
Yeah, I feel like there's another, like the only other and one other path I can think of where if you're trying the problem you're trying to solve for is that it's like if everyone can watch the content together, or I mean, watch the content in their own time, but then talk about it together. You know, I don't know if that's a better scenario. Because I mean, honestly, like with the fact, like, you know, we record our sessions and then you can access them whenever you want.
Yeah.
So there's definitely like an existing path where if you can't watch it live, you could watch it later. You know, you're missing the only thing you're missing is that live discussion. So I don't know. Yeah, like there's pros and cons to like all these methods. It's, you know, what I do try to encourage people is that every event is different, and like,
Yeah.
you know, for an example for us is that, you know, a lot of events are doing these kind of like live networking rooms and stuff like that, and we're not necessarily like we're gonna drive people to chat in our Slack, but for us, you know, we network all year round in our Slack. Like our Slack is a thing that anybody can hop in anytime and kind of have these chats. So that was a decision we made to not do that, you know, during our event for the sake of time. We were trying to squeeze in a lot in these 2 days. We normally have 3 tracks, but we normally have 3 tracks in person, and we normally have 1 or 2 tracks in the online. So we met in the middle for 2. But yeah, so that was our reason for like not trying the live networking.
Right.
Also, like I've been told that some events have been doing the live networking and it's gone okay, but I will admit that I struggled with envisioning this reality where you kind of hop into a random Zoom and talk to people. I mean, like, I think that was more like I was imagining, you know, these large rooms and, you know, because we when our in person we do group discussions where we have one block, and so each track is a different topic, like a high level topic, and so like last year it was multi-site was one room, accessibility was one room, and then Gutenberg. So you kind of pick which one.
Gutenberg room.
Yeah.
Housing
And
problems.
so we have moderators and facilitators to keep the conversation going, and you know, there are definitely more vocal participants, and there are those that just like to sit and listen, you know, that kind of stuff. So you kind of wonder how that would transition over to like a Zoom environment.
I would actually think that might work, because if you have some sort of upper cap on, say that you can't have more than, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 people in the room, and you have a moderator that is controlling who gets to speak. I'm saying I think it might be possible because we did that with my son. He's 3 and his classmates, and we had all 20 on a Zoom call at the same time. So needless to say, leaving all the mics open is not functional for any type of conversation because it's just all screaming all the time, right? But they very quickly locked into this idea that you're told when to speak. So we had them all, they made little sticks with their name on it, and then they would hold their name up to the screen anytime they wanted to talk. Because there is a raise hand function, but that requires understanding computers, right? So having a stick that was like, I want to talk, that worked well. There's some people that are chiming in here. So Kathy says, delivered a live presentation followed by Q&A in a virtual conference recently. It was very challenging to read the room. The facilitator did a great job of facilitating the crowd questions. And then Hashim says, I've done Zoom networking at a conference. It's less awkward than in person.
That is interesting to hear. Not what I would have guessed.
Well, I guess you don't have that. You don't have to approach people, right? Because that's always the difficult part of conferences. You have this room full of people who look very deep in conversation, and you're like, should I go interrupt those people over there? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, ultimately, it's like you don't really know how some of this stuff is going to go until you try it, and you know. We have more people.
I've been on meetings in Zoom where one person serves as moderator, and anyone who wants to talk puts a question in the chat module. Yeah, exactly. So there's there are some models for it. It's just, I find it interesting that we're now at a point where we're kind of forced to explore all these things very rapidly. And I think we'll see a lot of innovation in it. I also think we will very quickly see an improvement in accessibility on platforms, because I have a feeling that a lot of platforms will realize no one is using them, or people are like trying them once and then migrating off because of accessibility concerns, right? Because when it's like an extra thing, it's like an online conference as an add-on is one thing, but when the conference is an online conference and there's a lot of money involved, then all of a sudden these factors start factoring in a much more significant way.
Like, speaking of like money involved, you know, this was our conference this year isn't all that different from like our previous online conferences. The big difference for us was, you know, our in-person conference was the only time that we made, you know, any money. And we don't, you know, strive to make that much money, but we make, you know, some operational costs for the rest of the year kinds of stuff. And so where usually during our online conference, like, our goal isn't really to make any money. We just kind of put it on. We make, you know, we pay for captioning and that's it. So it's, we don't put tons of emphasis on like sponsorship, where like this year it was like, okay, we have to think outside the box more than we usually do with our online events for sponsors, because, you know, we need to make sure that we, you know, get that income and be able to put on the event and, you know, run our organization for the rest of the year kind of stuff. So that was interesting, and I think we came up with some interesting solutions. You know, we thought through a lot of different scenarios of like, do you have like, you know, some events have been doing, I think a lot of the WordCamps have been doing this model where like the sponsors have like Zooms and you just kind of like hop in there and talk to them.
Oh, interesting.
Have you seen that? I haven't attended any of them. And maybe it's only like, maybe it's not really all the camps, all the sponsors are doing it. Maybe it's just like, I think it was GoDaddy. Maybe it's just like, that's something GoDaddy's doing and no one else is doing. But
it's an interesting idea though to have, but I mean, you wouldn't even have to have that through the conference. You could just do it yourself, right? Just hijack the hashtag and be like, boot up a room and say, hey, you want to come talk to us about products?
Yeah, like having office hours or something where people can jump in and ask questions. You know, ultimately, you know, we want. So it's like, going back to our previous, you know, topic about the differences between like in person and online, where it's like in person, you have like the sponsor tables in the room set up, and if you Bridget said, I'm looking at the comments, which is distracting. They're totally great. Please comment. But I shouldn't look at them while I'm in the middle of a sentence. You know, in person, so let's, you know, you try to think of like, you have your like, you have your various, I can't think of the word. I was thinking, you know, personas. There we go. You have your various personas of the type of people. What?
Flashlight. Earphone.
Oh, you're just throwing out words.
Giving you words.
Super helpful. Morton the thesaurus. So your different personas, the types of people, like there's the person who like purposely wants to like, you know, who will go up and talk to, you know, a random person, who doesn't mind walking straight up into a sponsor booth and chatting for, you know, various amounts of time. And then there's the people who are, you know, not really wanting to, you know, talk to sponsors so much, you know, or they'll, you know, I'm more towards that end of the spectrum where I like to I'm a lurker, you know, where I'll go on the sponsor tables and look around and kind of feel the room first, and then, you know, if the sponsors are talking to someone, you know, I may or may not walk up to them, or may wait until they're alone and come up and talk to them, you know, that kind of persona. So you wonder how that would work in an online space where you're asking a person to just jump into a random Zoom and you have no idea who's in there. You know, like, are you going to hop in with this, with a salesperson that, you know, is going to be super salesy, or someone that, you know, so thankfully, you know, in the WordPress space, it's not that bad of like, you know, being sold to really harshly or anything. So you can go in and ask questions and such. It's ultimately it's just a lot of interesting things to like think about and wonder how those things would go. We decided to let sponsors, if they want to set up office hours, they can schedule times during the event, and they provide their own kind of Zoom, and people can hop in and talk to them. But the main appeal is that our top 2 tiers are getting basically demo blocks on the calendar. So if people want to watch their session and learn about their product, they can. If they don't want to, they don't have to. They can go eat lunch, or whatever. And then there will be lots of potential outlets for them to go ask follow-up questions or, whatever after their session. So we thought that was a less invasive way for people who are interested and want to learn more about their services to have an opportunity to kind of get the sales pitch you might get at the booth, without having to hop in random Zooms. And then you can, if you're interested, you can make the overture to go learn more about the product and talk to someone. Yeah. So we'll see how it goes.
So there's one more thing. We're actually over time already, but who cares? Oh. I'm in control here, so I can make all this. This is the internet. We can just keep going. You made a decision about swag for your conferences, and because today is Juneteenth, although people will be watching this when we are recording this, it's on June 16th. Isn't it?
19th.
19th. See, I lost track of dates 2 months ago. It's June 19th. It's Juneteenth. And there's been a lot of talk recently about social issues in the United States and around the world, and about racism and everything else. And I remember that last year at WP Campus, the conference decided to forego swag and instead shunt the money over to a local organization. I think it was Free Geek.
Free Geek.
And this year you're doing something similar, right?
Yes. So early days, we did decide to so the decision we made starting last year, is that instead of buying swag for everyone, that we would put that budget money towards a local nonprofit organization. So what we actually did was set a goal of 3,000. We put our 2,000 swag budget towards that, and then asked others to donate as well. And so we raised an extra 1,000, and was able to give that organization $3,000. And it was really great because a representative came and gave a lightning talk and spoke about what they do and how our money would help them, and that was really nice. You can go on our library and watch the presentation. So this year, obviously, giving to a local organization was not really a thing. So we early days, this was back in kind of in March, April, we were looking into COVID-related organizations, and we chose Feeding America. So that was going to be, and still is, one of the organizations we're donating to. But then when, over the last couple weeks, when these very important issues are being raised in the United States about racism and Black Lives Matter, we wanted to support that very important movement. So we decided to pivot a little bit. And what we ended up doing was selecting 4 or 5 organizations, 4 of which are related to the Black Lives Matter movement, and then also include Feeding America. And so what it is you can donate to any of those organizations on the list and submit your receipt to us, and we'll match up to $3,000. So nice. We're about 1,600 or 1,700 right now, which is over half, which is really great. And so,
but there's still room for people.
There's still room to people to donate, and we'll match. And it's been really great. We our Twitter's been kind of quiet lately because we didn't want to leave. We wanted to leave room on social media for more important things. We tweeted a little bit about the donations So we'll do another push for that on Monday when we make the announcement of the program. So my hope is that some more folks will submit, and you can backtrack donations from May 1st, I believe. So if you've donated to any of those organizations, you can go to 2020.wpcampus.org/donate.
2020
2020.wpcampus.
My banner here. There.
There we go. There's a big donate button on the website. But yeah, I was very proud of that decision, the swag decision in general that we started doing last year. I like swag. Everyone likes swag for the most part. But the reality of swag is that, you can order these fun swaggy things because you can do it in bulk. So you're buying the same thing for everyone, when the reality is that not everyone will like that one thing you bought. Most likely it'll probably, depending on the level of like quality, it'll probably go on the trash. I can't tell you the number of crap that I've gotten from all the conferences I've attended, and I'm not, this might sound a little crass, but a lot of that's like WordCamps. And I think that's just the nature of WordCamps are events with, very low tickets and therefore very low budgets when it comes to these things. So like the things that they can afford to buy in bulk are usually not high quality. And so if they're not high quality and not something you really want or need, it just piles up and you don't know what to do with this because you feel bad throwing it away. But you probably end up throwing it away. Or if you can, you try to donate it or give it to somebody or whatever. And I don't know. So that just, for me, it was just like that level of waste. And we were getting feedback from, people at our events that it's like, that they don't even, we started offering to shirts because we order shirts too. So we do actually still get shirts because everyone loves the shirts, but we actually give you an option as part of your registration to say if you want a shirt or not. And that way we're not, ordering shirts that aren't going to be worn. Yeah. Because the first couple years I came home, I still have in my basement, boxes of leftover shirts.
I have shirts from conferences I've organized too. They're just sitting there like weird sizes, like sizes that no one wears, like super, super small and very, very large, and nothing in the middle. So nothing that is easy to use. Yeah. They're now rags in our house. We use them to clean stuff.
When we first got started, the first couple of years, we used Gildan brand shirts, which are like the cheap shirts, and then the third year, I believe, is when it started. I found this next level quality shirt, not too much more expensive. It's called District Made is the brand. It's like the cheap, there's next level brand shirts that are super soft. And these are like the more affordable version of that. Right. I literally went to my t-shirt vendor and I was like, listen, I want this shirt, but I don't want to pay for it. What can what options do I have? I don't want to pay that much money. So I found this shirt. So people love the shirts because they're so comfortable. And so we do get the shirts, but we don't get random coffee mugs and we don't, stuff like that. We do try to get gifts for our speakers, I'm always super cognizant of the fact that we are asking people to speak for free and, and what that means. So I do try to do something for them to say thank you. So we usually end up getting some kind of thank you gift for them and a thank you gift for organizers. Right. Which that one's usually like customized. Last year we ordered mugs. We got these cute little camping mugs for all the organizers that had the logo from the shirt on one side and their name on the other, and that was really cute.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, that's nice. We ordered those off Etsy. Choosing I see people talking about swag in the comments. Choosing swag is so hard. I love swag, but it's hard. It's getting low value swag is harder.
It's so true. It's like when you're doing the work of finding swag, it's very difficult because you're like, how do I pick something that, I want to show you this. So we organized an event many years ago called WordCamp Developers. It was before there was such a thing as a developer-focused WordCamp. I got in a lot of trouble for it in 2011. And then my wife is very cognizant of this issue that we don't want to give people crap. So for swag, we got these Moleskine-like notebooks. And you know it's not Moleskine when each notebook costs $2 with embossing on it. So they're actually embossed with the WordCamp developers logo. In like, you look at it and you go, oh, it's Moleskine. And you touch it and you go, it's not Moleskine. This is plastic.
There's no way.
And then we got a pen and we were like, how do we wanted to communicate the sessions and everything, but we didn't want to give people extra paper. And we found this amazing product here.
Oh,
it's called a banner.
That's cute.
Pen, and it has the schedule on it, right? And so everyone got a notepad. So there's the sponsorship on the back and then the schedule on the front. And there's a QR code so you can go and get the digital schedule. So everyone got a pen and a notepad. And it became this thing where everyone's like, oh my God, do you have more of these, right? And we were like, no, we can't give out too many. I have a whole box in the back of like cheap-ass fake Moleskines and these pens if you want them. So it's just, swag is very difficult. And I have to commend your conference for choosing to just forego it because it's something that it feels almost wrong to not have swag because people expect swag, but then when you realize if the swag is just crap, then it isn't really worth it anyway. So it's a tough decision, but then pivoting it to some like a social cause that actually matters. And I have to say, the person who came out to the conference last year and spoke about what they do, that was impactful. Like to actually hear that this isn't just a random thing, like you put money into a thing and then it goes and does things in the world. It was literally a person who was like, this is a person we have helped. This is how much it costs to help this person. You are giving this much, which means we can help like 40 people the way we helped her. And everyone was sitting there going, this is very, I need to find some way of donating more money to this. Right
yes.
Right? But it's good to see open source taking that responsibility, especially because open source, like you were alluding to, there's very little money in these conferences. And then seeing an open source community band around an issue and say, we're going to put money into this instead of just, buying more coasters.
Well, and for us, a kind of like alternative that folks should think about is that like, we're working on creating like a Zazzle shop or Zazzle.com, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So it's like if you really want to get our cute mascot on stuff, you can just go there and order it and have it shipped to your house. And so there's definitely paths where you
line and wait and have your like card punched to show that you've had the T-shirt and. You don't get that full experience.
You don't get that full, where you pick up the stuff and then immediately go to the trash and put it in the trash. Yeah. You get to miss out on that experience.
With, like, bags of stuff from conferences, and I was like, what is that? And the garbage is over there. But now I have a 3-year-old, so he can go plunder all the stuff, right? So I was trying to...
one of my favorite pieces of swag, I moved my desk recently, and I guess I didn't put it back on my desk. We have this amazing phone wedge where the Wapoo is on the phone wedge, and that's really cute. I do have our someone crocheted me our Wapoo. Isn't that cute?
Oh,
with
nice.
the little graduation hat. It's so cute. I do have a coaster. We try to think of things that we think will be most beneficial to people. So like our first year was mugs, I think. I think the one year we tried to get nice coffee travel ones, but they ended up being crap.
Yeah, I have one at home. I think.
Were you in St. Louis?
Like the insert came out, or it might not have been from your conference. It might have been someone else.
I don't think you were in St. Louis.
No, I wasn't. St. Louis. I was there for some other reason.
We were like 6 months before that. We've given out some neat stuff, but ultimately, I like our decision, and I think that's the better.
I think it's the right one, and it just shows again that you are always on the forefront of the things that matter and driving the world in a positive direction. So
I
whatever
try.
you do is usually the right choice. So, you should just commit to it, stick with it. I think it's awesome. So we're going to wrap up because at some point we have to stop this so that people can go and have lunch or whatever they're doing. Anyone who wants to have a pen and a notepad,
the live comments are filled with it. I want the pen.
I will totally send it to you. You just have to ping me on social media. Like, go to LinkedIn, send me an email, and be like, "Hey, I want a pen and a notepad. Give me your address." Keep in mind, currently, if you send something by mail, it'll take anywhere between like 2 weeks to 3 months to get anywhere. So and I will send it by cheapest possible transport costs, whatever that is, like transport by a letter pigeon or something like that. So yeah, whatever. Before we leave, well, first of all, thank you, Rachel, for joining me on this beta test of my new livecast. For those of you watching, I'm going to do these probably every week. I'm not entirely sure on the day of the week yet, but I'm going to do them, try to do it every week. It's supposed to be a half-hour conversation, but when Rachel and I are in the same room, it never is half an hour. The idea of this livecast is simply for me to invite people to talk about their stuff. Now, what I'm looking for is people to share something interesting that they are doing, which is why this livecast is called Show and Tell. If you missed the amazing intro I created, I will play it for you again because it's so awesome. That's enough of that.
Did you make that graphic?
I spent all of 5 minutes on it in Illustrator this morning. It's very, very good. Like, don't question my decision-making process. So it's literally show and tell. You tell me that you want to show something, I'll bring you on the livecast and we'll talk about it. So if you are interested in taking part and have something cool to show, it doesn't have to be something like a conference. It could also be, look at this piece of code I wrote, or look, I learned how to paint figurines and I want to show you that. One of my friends is going to come talk about how he builds instruments. Another one is going to come talk about how to do photography. So, and making a very wide gamut here. If you have something you want to show on Show and Tell, just hit me up and I'll put you on the schedule and we'll make that happen. Final answer for final question, Jonathan is asking, what are you using for your streaming platform? I am using something called StreamYard. It is a local company from Vancouver Island that has put this up, and it's entirely web-based, so you don't need to set anything fancy up, and it works really well. It seems like the thing that's going to take over the streaming world. And I paid for it, which is why you don't see the logo, which is why you're wondering, what am I using? That's what it is. StreamYard.com, like stream as in like water going down a hill in a not too big pile, yard as in the area behind or in front of your house where you have your dog, vegetables, grass, or something else. StreamYard.com. All right. That is it for today's show and tell. I hope you'll tune in at some point in the future, perhaps, or maybe you're watching this later, in which case you're tuning in later than now, which is also interesting. That's it. Goodbye. I'll see you in the future.
See you on the internet.